And you can see there on the screen, if you would like to tweet today, we'd very much like you to do that direct to the Queensland Government's Twitter handle, which is @BusinessQLDGov, of course the business area there, and there is a hashtag today of QLDBiz, so feel free to text chat during the presentation or after and tell us what you thought. We are today, of course, talking about strengthening your business. So I was really pleased to see such a lot of people registering for this topic because it's an important one, and it's sort of something that every business should be thinking of, really. No matter how successful you are, you can always do things to make it stronger and, you know, to be successful into the future and not just today as well. So here's what we've got on the agenda today. The importance of being customer-centric, thinking about your customers. We all like to think we do that, but at times we do it better than others. Trends that can affect your business, strategies to strengthen your business, improving cash flow, people, because they are, after all, a big part of your business, and you can certainly make your business stronger by getting the right people and looking after them. And then systems as well, which, you know, with the advent of the technology age, is certainly something that you should be looking at. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, though you are very welcome to interact with us via text chat throughout the session. I'll give you a little tip on how to do that on this screen. So what you should be able to see is something like this in front of you. If you actually click on that red arrow up the top left there, it should expand your menu and give you a little section there where you can actually type me in a question, a comment, a smiley face, whatever you feel like sending. So just to make sure that you've got the hang of that, I'd love you all to drop me a little text chat right now just to say hello. And when they start coming through, I'll continue. Brilliant, lots of people saying hi and hello, and a few names I recognise too, so welcome to all the people who've done webinars with us before, and an extra big welcome if this is your first webinar too. Alright, apart from being able to text chat us at any time, you're very welcome to raise your hand, and that's signified here in this red area, so simply click on it to put your hand up, and we will know towards the end that you would like to ask a question, and we'll give you the opportunity to do so. I should also mention that today facilitating with me is Anthony Viner, so if you are struggling with anything technical or have questions, you're welcome to text chat direct to him, and he will do his best to respond to you. Now I haven't introduced myself. For those of you I haven't met before, my name's Yvette Adams, and we've won a lot of awards as a company, and I'm proud to have won a lot of awards as a business owner as well, both locally, regionally, and nationally. I've actually started 5 businesses. I started out young. My first business was when I was 17, so I look back and I think, well, I've always really been an entrepreneur. I just didn't know what it was called at the time. I've sold 2 of those businesses, and these days I focus on 2 of them. The Creative Collective is who is delivering this today. We developed and deliver this great content from the Queensland Government, and I also have a new startup called awardshub.com, which is an online portal. If you're interested in finding out business awards you can enter, you can feel free to go and have a look at that. We work with startups right through to really big companies, and we work with them locally here on the Sunshine Coast, but also across Australia, and we even do interact with people internationally. And why not? We live in this digital age, so let's make the most of it. I like to mention to people that I am a mum. My kids are 6 and 9, so do not the juggle of being a parent is like. It's pretty hectic sometimes, but it's all possible with good planning and organisation, and getting you tips and tricks from things like these webinars is a really good way to work out how to be effective and efficient with your time as well. And I absolutely love training and assisting others, and I love getting feedback too on how you can do it better, so I welcome that at any time. So, to get into the presentation, the first thing, the big question I want you to ask yourselves is, what does your customer actually want? Now that might sound like a really simple question, and you might think you know what your customer wants, but I want to explore that a little bit more, because if you can actually understand that at quite a deep level, you really will strengthen your business. And we have seen with clients we have worked with, and you probably know some yourselves, those that think they know what the customers want, and they order a new product line or manufacture things or provide a certain service in a certain way at a certain price point, but actually the customers don't want that, and they're not checking in often enough to find out what it is they really want. So let's explore this concept a bit more. Now, this screenshot may be a little blurry. You may not be able to read it, and if you can't, don't worry too much. But I wanted to let you know that apart from being customer centric, you need to also look at the big picture. There are always mega trends or macro sort of things going on in the world which will impact on your business. And some clever guys, they're futurists, called Ross Dawson and Richard Watson, they actually created this trend blend diagram. They released it 2007, I believe, the first time. This is the most recent one from 2010. I'm going to get Anthony to send you through a link if you want to have a proper look at the full PDF in your own time. But you can see some of the bigger I guess, topics going on, which are impacting most businesses and some more so than others, depending on what it is you do. We've got power shifting towards the east, as in the Asian markets. We've got an aging population the world around. Globalization, that's very much a case. Urbanization, but then interestingly enough, in the middle there, localism is happening. Personalization. When I was in Silicon Valley very recently, that was a big buzzword where people were saying, you know, they don't want to walk into a hotel and get treated like a number. They want to walk in and have their favorite music playing and their favorite bottle of wine waiting for them and their bed made in the way that they like and their name, you know, personalized on a card. So they really do feel like a good customer and a guest. So there's big trends towards that stuff. Digitalisation, which is an area I know a lot about and very passionate about, and certainly we're all seeing, I believe, the effects of the digital age, and that will only continue. Sustainability and environmental change. Debt is still a big issue for the world, and off that comes anxiety. And there's lots of sort of more micro trends within that that you as a business need to be aware of. So to move on to the next slide, I really want to challenge you to think about the major trends that could affect your business or that are affecting your industry. Because if you can kind of anticipate rather than just react to this stuff, you'll be in a much better place. So it's hard sometimes when you've started a business or created a product and you really love it and, you know, it's your baby. But sometimes you've just got to make an executive business decision and realize that things have to change in order to strengthen your business. There might be even cases where you have to get rid of product lines as well. So I'd love you to text in if there's something on the screen there you can see that definitely is already impacting on your business or could potentially impact in your business. If I were to look at that, I'd have to say, let's see, exponential growth and innovations and inventions. You know, we operate in this technology industry and it's just constantly changing. I mean, I have to change my slides all the time. I have to do a lot of research to keep up. So that's a challenge and an issue I have to be aware of. So let's have a look at what's coming in from you. Seasonal businesses, too much rain, so environmental impacts. Just a couple coming in from a couple of people. Please feel free to text in which of these are impacting on your business too, okay? I'd love to keep knowing that as I continue. Now, with all of this going on, I'm really curious to know how many of you would like more revenue. Put up your hands if you would like more revenue. I'd expect to see a sea of hands. There wouldn't be too many people, would there, who don't want more money? Okay, so the ones that aren't putting up their hands, I'm presuming you haven't worked out how to put up your hands yet. I'm going to presume that most of you want to generate more revenue. Now, lots of people and businesses, to strengthen their business, they scratch their heads and they go, well, how can I make more money? I don't know what to do about it. I can give you the code, and you know, Queensland government has actually given you the code in the workbook that's been made available to you. It's 3 very simple ways and they're on screen. You either have to get more customers or get a greater value for every sale you make, or you need to increase the frequency of your sales. Now, in some cases, you can get those going on the multiplier effect, so more than one of those. But if you were to achieve just one of those, you will actually find that your business is strengthened. It has more revenue. So have any of you focused on 1, 2, or 3? And have you seen what impact it's had on your business? I'd love you to text chat that in as well. Great, and a few more people have contributed to the last slide. Lawrence says changes in life expectancy are impacting on him, changes to family life, Chinese market hurting us on price, more customers, says someone else. Okay, and that's Russell must be replying to my latest question. So he's saying more customers. Is that something you've done, Russell, or you would like to do and you think that would generate more revenue? I am interested, but I'm also going to keep the presentation moving, so please do still send it through. Okay, once you have a customer, a thing you need to know to strengthen your business is that it's much cheaper to keep them than it is to keep marketing for new business. Often we'll sit down with a business and they will say, we want to market, we want more business. And we'll say, well, that's great. But what have you done with your existing customers? What's your defection rate? How many customers are you losing? How often? And they won't actually know those stats off the top of their head. So this is a little exercise I encourage you to go ahead and do. Work out your customer defection rate. It says here, just by reducing that by 5% can actually increase your profits 25 to 85%. So that's a pretty easy way to strengthen your business. And if you are losing more than 10 to 30%, which is very average, then you probably have a bit of a problem. If you're losing less, it does of course depend on the industry and a bunch of other factors, but you're doing quite well. So I hope those benchmarks are quite useful to you. But ask yourself, are your customers happy with your product, services, or company? And what are your strategies to retain profitable customers? I'd love you to share some of those with us as well. So here's some customer retention strategies that are in the workbook that was supplied as part of registering for the session. One is identifying the timing and frequency of promotions. How often are you going out there and reminding them that you're there? Think about it yourself. You see a company, you see an offer, you think, that's good, I want to do that, but you don't because something distracts you, it's just not the right time. Unless someone actually comes back to you with that offer, even though you were totally keen on it, you were really interested in the offer, you may not have taken it just because they didn't come back to you for that second time. So make sure you do go out, but there is always a balance, of course, with not doing it too often. Know your customers. You can do surveys, you can have focus groups, you can run competitions where you solicit information, and that can also help you retain customers if you really get to know them. Do the unexpected. I always think of Richard Branson when I read that one because he's always doing crazy stuff and customers love him for it, for being outlandish. Look, that may or may not be your strategy or your personality, but sometimes sending them an unexpected card or gift or note could be a really nice thing. Connecting them to information, that's one of my favorites. If I see a link or an opportunity, I think I'd love that, I forward it on, and they usually really appreciate it. Use partnerships to build retention. Who could you partner with that offers a similar but not the same sort of offer that would help your clients like your service? So, for instance, if you're a hairdresser, you could partner with a beautician and do some kind of package offer, and that you would both benefit from, and you'll build customers and retain them as well. Use your database to maximize the personalization of offers. There's nothing worse, is there, when you get an email and it's, Dairy Vet, here's an offer for, I don't know, male grooming products, and you're thinking, well, I'm not a male and I don't really want those products. Really, it's a good idea to segment your database and just send out information that would be most relevant to them. Now, that can be a bit of work, but if you use a good e-marketing system, there are some to do it. I know we've segmented ours by local stuff. I mean, we know Townsville people don't want to know about Sunshine Coast events, so we don't send them that stuff. We just send them the stuff that they're most interested in. There's loyalty programs. There's delivering a good customer service. That's obviously key. Keeping your company at the top of the customer's minds by using a diverse marketing mix. They're just a few strategies, and I hope I've got your ideas going. And make sure that you do have a look at the workbook to really sit down, maybe with your team or partner, to go into these in a bit more depth. Now, looking at this screen, who here is familiar with the 80-20 rule? Raise your hands if you've heard of this. You know exactly what I'm on about. Okay, there's a few hands going up, but not so many. So for those of you who haven't heard of it, it's a well-known fact that actually 20% of your customers, only a small segment, actually give you about 80% of your business. If you do analysis on most businesses, that is the case. So to maximize your profit and do well as a business, you need to grow your profitable lines and customers. So really fun, it's actually quite a fun exercise to do, and it's one that we as a company tend to do at the end of each year, is go through our list and classify them into A's, B's and C's. So A's, we call them awesome. And the way we classify them, you may like to take our lead, or you might like to modify it slightly to your own business. They are great people to deal with. They're polite, they're courteous, they respect us, they appreciate us, they spend a lot with us, and we get great results with them. So it's just all in all a beautiful thing. They spend usually quite regularly with us as well. So they're our awesome customers. They're usually the ones who are giving us 80% of our business. They're the ones we really need to look after. Then we have B for basic. So they might be customers who have bought from us once or twice. They're not too bad as customers, but they're not amazing either. They wouldn't fall into the A bracket, but usually the Bs, we'll keep them on. And we can also work out how can we make the Bs turn into As? How can we get them to spend more or more frequently, going back to those things we looked at before, or how can we get them to value us and our services? Now, in many cases, there may be a need for education in that zone because they really don't understand what's possible, your knowledge, what it costs, how long it takes, all that sort of thing, particularly when you're in a service-based industry. Now C, I'll be a bit harsh here. C sometimes are the clients you actually want to cull, C-U-L-L, but they're the casual clients. They might have bought from you once and never again. They're usually the whingers. They're usually the ones that take the longest to pay if they pay at all. And then the ones you really do want to often get rid of. So it's a case of going and segmenting those and then working out strategies to segment them away. Some strategies we've played with in the past ourselves is increasing our rates. Which they can't always afford. It's sometimes even going as far as firing them and sending them a letter and saying we just don't think we're a good fit, occasionally connecting them to someone we think would be a better fit for them. So there's a few strategies in there. Go through that process. It might seem like a painful one, but geez, when you're focusing on the awesome clients, your profit margins do look a whole lot better. Has anyone ever done this exercise themselves, classifying their clients and even maybe having to make some difficult decisions and cutting some? Send me through a yes or a no, or any comments, or raise your hands as well if you like. Dapo says no, he's never done it. Is it something you think you might do, Dapo? Do you think it could strengthen your business? Certainly. Fantastic. Well, glad to hear you've got a tip already today. Okay, so apart from really looking very analytically at your customers, you also need to look very analytically at your product or service lines. Now, I know in the audience today, we're going to have very different businesses. I'm sure some of you are product driven, some of you are service driven. But whatever it is you're selling, you need to ask yourself, is it profitable? And secondly, can it be profitable, even if it's not now? And what would it take to make it so? Are they likely to grow in the future? And do they form a part of the strategic plan for your business? Now, how we approach this is we actually got a business coach in because, like I said earlier, when you're close to a product and it is your baby, it can be really hard to let it go if you've invested a lot into developing this product and a lot of time and maybe money as well. So we did a number of exercises with our amazing business advisor, and she gave us some terminology which I'd like to share with you because it really worked for us. She got us to put our different products, even though they're services, we're now referring to them as products, into a rising stars category. Ones that we think are on the up, there's more and more demand for them, and we think they have a lot more potential to go. So we called them rising stars. The second category, we had our cash cows. They were our same old, things that have always performed fairly well, but they're not really going places either. So they're our cash cows. That's where we get most of our cash. And then we had products that we called our dogs. The products that just weren't making money, that were taking a lot of time, that were causing a lot of issues in the business, and we basically worked out that the dogs were the ones we needed to retire. So pretty important exercise to do. The other point I'd like to make is that you really need to do this process quite often, depending on what business you're in. For us, we're a very dynamic business. One of our products is social media, so within that, stuff just changes in terms of what we're offering and how we're offering it. So you need to, I'm going to steal a term from Silicon Valley, always be in a state of perpetual beta. Now, beta is a term for technology, which basically means first release, and it's often very minimal what features it has. But in Silicon Valley, they basically release products or services just with minimal features, and then they're constantly trying to keep them innovative and update them and change them and make them better and better based on customer feedback. So it's a really good business model, actually, to to try out yourself. So who's sitting there thinking, you know, you might need to dog some products, or you could go through that rising star and cash cow dog sort of model, or just ask these very personal questions on the screen, and that could be a good sort of exercise for your business. Just to read out some comments that are coming through, and I hope you don't mind me sharing those. Helen shared she has gone through the ABC principles, and the customer was costing us more in time and effort than their overall spend. That's so common for the C customers. They always take the most time, and it's quite scary, isn't it, when you identify that they're costing you more than you're bringing in from them. So they definitely need to be cut, don't they? John says he's worked for a company that's classified customers ABC on net profit contribution, and it's good to realise some high volume customers may be at the same margin and sometimes are at a loss. So that's absolutely true too. Chandra said, we recently had to let go of a dog, but we were happy that all people using the service transferred to our cash cow. So there you go, that's a great result, and I bet your profit margins are looking better too. Dapo's made the call that changing one's products or strategies frequently could confuse clients. Look, that's a really good call, Dapo. We're probably not suggesting you change your whole product range, but, you know, make small changes. So out of our suite of, we have about 15 products, we actually only dogged one, and we moved some of them into different categories. And what was really interesting to us was that some that were rising, that were cash cows back in January, are now actually rising stars. So they can switch between categories as well. They can change. So no, I'm not necessarily saying to do this across your whole product range, but just look at it like that analytically. Don't get too, I guess, emotional about it, and maybe even get outside help, because that can help you to look at it analytically. Right, moving on, market trends. There's lots of different marketing trends that can assist you in strengthening your business to basically make it last a long time and be profitable. I really want to emphasize here, and again, I'm coming from sort of a biased point, but I see it work every day, is the need to digitize and operate a business online, and to look into, if you're not already doing it, online marketing strategies. I can tell you time and time again, they do tend to provide the best return on investment. Now, if you're doing traditional marketing and it's working, sure, don't change it. But if you're not exploring, at least trialing online marketing, you really do need to look at it. Some other sort of marketing trends is we're seeing people own brands rather than assets. You know, once upon a time, McDonald's was all about, for instance, buying up real estate and having these amazing assets everywhere, prime real estate, which it certainly still has, but its brand integrity is just as important, for instance. And I mean, they have had some negative media recently as this week, and really, your value is in your brand. So making sure you have a good reputation and people think fondly of your brand and want to do business with your brand is pretty important too. Customize your marketing rather than talk to a mass market. You know, a lot of people come and see us, and I'll say, well, who's your target market? And they'll say, oh, well, everyone. And my answer to that is usually you actually can't market without a target market. Once you do customize it and you understand your customer profiles, your marketing is much more customized, and it actually just hits the mark. Doesn't mean you won't do business or accept business from other places, but really think about your ideal client. You can see at the bottom one there, that's very true, that things have evolved as a trend from a marketing monologue where you're putting out messages on TV and on flyers and on websites and going, this is who we are, this is what we do, to a customer dialogue. And a customer really expects that. It's a two-way communication is what a dialogue means. So, you know, things like social media, that's so much better in lots of ways than a website, because on a website, sure, they can fill in a form and you will respond, but it's not instant. Whereas on social media, they can write one little message and you might write one little message back. It's a very dynamic type conversation, which is why I'm such a big fan of social media, among other reasons. And on that note, if you're interested in finding out more about social media and its suitability to your business, you might want to jump on the Introduction to Social Media workshop we've got on as part of this series, which is happening next Wednesday, same time. You could also find more products and services that can be sold to the same customer rather than pursuing market share. So that's about getting the frequency and the value up. And what else can I tell you? Focusing on the retention rather than the attraction is another key point, which is really a big theme of this whole webinar. So getting your marketing right. Look, people come to us as marketing professionals, and I think they just want you to tell you this is what you should do, and absolutely it's going to work. Well, it'd be nice to be in that position, but the fact is every business is so different. So what we tend to say is we're going to test this out, then we're going to measure it, then we're going to change it so that it works even better, and then when we've got it right, we'll repeat the process. And only when you've been through that a few times over is your marketing usually working really well. So you've got to have some perseverance, you've got to ask the right questions, and you've got to be working with a team that is understanding that process and isn't just going, yeah, we'll take your money, we'll throw up a website, we'll do some spend, and we'll just leave it sitting there. It's kind of a constant process, and you should be working with them quite closely. I've already made the point that online tends to be more measurable than offline, which is also why it's a really good thing to use. The other thing is, I guess when you say measure, you need to really think about what is it that you want to measure for your business. What is the definition of success? So if you were to market and it was to work, how would you know it's worked? You know, would it have worked because the phone's ringing? Is it inquiries you're after? Would it have worked because you've got a bunch of online forms completed? Is that what you're going for, like leads? Would it have worked if you're actually making sales? So look, it's different for everybody. So in order to measure, you've really got to have some good systems in place. Google Analytics is an online statistical and free tool I recommend every business have installed on their website. Just out of interest, hands up if you do have Google Analytics installed and you do regularly check it to see how your website's performing, because pretty important that you do have that. Okay, quite a few hands up. For those of you who haven't got your hands up on that one, I really encourage you to. Google Analytics is like the heartbeat of your online side of your business, which can give you great insights. You know, it can show that people are searching for this type of word and landing on your site and actually making sales. So you know you need to sell more of those things, or make that particular product more prominent on your front page and so on. It can give you great analysis. What about your CRM or tracking inquiries? Often I'll say to people, did that marketing work? And they'll go, nah, it didn't work. And I'll say, well, how many inquiries did you get? And they'll go, I don't know, a few. And it's all a bit vague. So you really need to get some mechanisms in place where the staff who are answering the phone or accepting the emails make a mark. And it can be as simple as line, 4 lines, line through. There's 5 inquiries. But you need to have a system to funnel that in. I will admit it's taken our company a long time to get that right. We were measuring really well online, but we were finding the offline stuff really hard to measure. But over time, through, I guess, bringing this discussion up at team meetings, I've found that, you know, now they understand the need to do this and be able to have trends from one month to another of when inquiries were high, how that translated into leads and sales, so they know that they can hit their targets. And all of my staff are empowered with targets, which I find works really well as well. So in short, on this slide, as a bit of homework, I really encourage you to go away and evaluate your current marketing activities and the spend, and to be able to say how well it's working and what you might need to do to refine it, and keep on with that. It's an ever-going process. I'm sorry, you don't just do it and get it right and that's the end of it. Okay, moving on, pricing. Now this part is probably one of the most difficult parts for business. You just don't always know what the right price is. I know over the years I started off very low and I've increased my prices. I think we've increased our value of what we can offer as a company. But there's some other methods on screen that you could look at if you haven't thought of these to get your pricing right. One is cost plus. So that's where you work out what is your cost on the goods and you add a percentage on it to determine a selling price. So I know a lot of retailers, for instance, might increase by 100%. However, I was talking to a fashion outlet and she was saying 200% is what she adds on to her wholesale rate, which I was pretty impressed by. Coffee, did you know, is about a 400% markup, which is why people in the coffee business do quite well, although there is an awful lot of them in the market now. So that's one method anyway. Market-based. some of you are in such a competitive market, you actually can't choose your price. You have to see what's been done in the market already and kind of gone along with that. That is a strategy. Sometimes you can be mindful that that's what they're charging, but still charge more if you can come up with a good value proposition that positions your business as being worth more against someone else. And a way we've done that I'm a big fan of, for instance, is business awards. You know, we can say we're the best for that. So you can go with that other company. Yes, they're cheaper, but if you look at this award and our credibility and all of our knowledge over here, we know that we're worth that more. And sometimes people are prepared to pay a bit more to get the right result. Skimming. So this is an interesting one where you set the price high and you don't go for lots of sales, but you just go for a higher profit, thus skimming the market. So for some people, you know, where they have quite an exclusive kind of premium brand, that's really their method. They're saying, I don't want lots of customers, I only want a few, but I want a few that are going to pay me a lot and I'll just work really well on them and there'll be a higher profit margin in that. So that's fine if you get the numbers you need to achieve that. I guess you'd need to do some forecasts to work out if that is a viable pricing model for you. The penetration pricing is yet another one where you set the selling price low to get customers' interest and to get a foothold in the market. So there's also a term called loss leading that's similar to that, where you basically even take as much of a loss and you say, I know I'm not going to make money on this first sale, but once I've got them in, I'm going to upsell them from there. You may remember, and they're still kind of there, there's all those coupons and things. They're kind of a penetration pricing or loss leading exercise, because usually you give away a bunch of your services to get people in the door and on your database, and then it's up to you to sell them other stuff or make them a repeat client, which is when you actually start getting the money in. So love to know, actually. Text me in, what pricing systems are you using? Any of those on the screen there, or something else that you found works really well for you? Give me some information and I'll be happy to share it with the others. Russell says his is market-based, so that's probably because you're in a competitive market, I'm presuming. Jane said hers is market-based, so that's interesting. So this is the great thing about this type of webinar, isn't it? Because I can share with you what the others are saying, and you can go, oh, well, I'm not the only one, so that's quite nice to know, isn't it? Cher says market-based as well. Tammy says her husband's mechanical business uses the skimming method, so that's interesting. Penetration pricing while the business is new, says Jennifer Cooper. That's a good strategy, actually, when the business is new. You may need to do that. Judy says market-based. It's the travel industry, so I can understand exactly why you would do that. Market-based, a lot of you are saying cost plus and market-based. Penetration pricing from someone else, cost plus, used a couple, market-based. There's an awful lot of market-based coming from. And Sally says we're a design, manufacture, and sell both retail and wholesale and use a combination of all four. So, well, out of all of that, and thank you for everyone who's making comments, it's great interaction to see. I guess hopefully there's some on the board that you can go, wow, I haven't tried that one, maybe I will. Or also to know, that's what it's called, what I'm doing. Maybe you weren't even aware of it. Or maybe if you are, just to get reassurance that you're on the right track. Now, one of the biggest mistakes I see businesses do, and it actually puts them out of business, is discounting, because they start off and maybe things aren't going so well. So they think by just discounting the price, they'll get more business and be better off. But it turns into quite a sort of downward and vicious cycle, actually. And this table hopefully explains to you just how dangerous it can be. Particularly in an economic slowdown like we've been in for quite a long time, there's lots of temptation to discount to get people in. I mean, look at all the TV ads you see with discount this and today only, and they're down, 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 and 70% off, and it seems unreal that they could actually withhold that sort of discount. Anyway, if your present margin, what you're making, is 20% or 30% or 40% or 50%, and you reduce the price by 10 or 20 or 30%, then to produce the same gross revenues, your sales volume must go up significantly. So this is where people get it wrong. The part of the blue bottom might actually explain it a bit better. if you're operating on a 30% gross profit and then you did a 10% sale, that doesn't sound like much, does it? 10%. Probably a lot of us have done that before. You would actually need to get an additional 50% to maintain a 30% profitability. So, by discounting 10%, you might see more sales going on, but your profit level might actually drop. So you might actually not be worth doing it at all. If you're interested in this topic, there's a great book I've read on this topic, which I might get Anthony to text through. It's called The Power of Positive Profit. So you could go ahead and Google that. My brother gave me that book. He's sort of in business as well, and he said, read it, and you'll never discount again, and you'll see why so many businesses go out of business. So hopefully that's a good little tip. Distribution. Now, this slide is going to be more relevant to some of you than others. Some of you don't actually distribute, physical products. Some of you provide services, and you can only distribute or effectively a certain area. So the likes of hairdressers, doctors, massage therapists, personal trainers, they can only ever usually service a local area unless they go online, which is where distribution suddenly got a whole lot interesting. Did you know there's a crazy stat actually on this distribution? It's a slight side note, but it is that the number of envelopes being sent by Aussie Post has, of course, significantly gone down due to email, social media, and other online communication. The number of packages being sent or arriving is significantly going up because of all the online shopping we're doing. So that's pretty interesting phenomena to be aware of. But look, whatever it is that you do, when it comes to distribution, the questions to ask yourselves are there on the screen. What's the most convenient and cost-effective way that customers can have access to our products? So just before this webinar, I was looking at a business model of a client who sells sports coaching books. And they're very firm on the fact that they want other people to warehouse those. They don't want those in their house. They don't want to be selling out a book here and a book there. So they're doing what's effectively called drop shipping. That is where someone else has the warehouse and posts it out. Now, around the world, these massive logistical warehouses are growing at a phenomenal rate because of the online shopping phenomena. So that's something to be aware of. If you are physically housing stuff, could it be done cheaper, faster, easier from there? How can you expose to target customers to your products even though they may not be aware of you? That's also a customer reach thing. So, for instance, SEO is one that comes to mind, search engine optimization. They're not aware of you, they don't know what your book titles are called, but they search relevant words and your book appears, then you have a chance of reaching those customers. Look, there's resellers as another distribution model. You don't actually worry about how you get it to them. You have other people out there selling and then getting it to them. Warehouse management, which we've talked about. Integration, you might need to integrate bundling with other products to give a complete solution to customers' requirements. So you might require resellers and you might need technology and so on to do that. So I want to ask you the question, are you happy with your current distribution and could you explore new ones? Is there anything else that you would like to ask or discuss in this topic? There's a few interesting questions coming through, and I'd really like to pick up as many of them as I can, so we'll do that towards the end. Not too many comments coming through on distribution. Perhaps a lot of you are locally based businesses that aren't doing the physical distribution. Okay, oops, I went a slide too far. Right, strategy. I can't emphasize this slide enough, to be honest. The businesses who do the best have a good solid strategy that they review often, that their whole team is on board with, and that they effectively implement. It's that simple. So if you kind of in your head kind of know what you're trying to do, it's just not solid enough. So you need to put together a strategy. It doesn't need to be long. I've even seen one-page strategies, which are very effective. And some of the key questions you need to ask yourself to strengthen your business are, where are we now? So, what's your gross profit margins? What are you selling? What's your revenue? How many staff do you have? All of that stuff. Goals and objectives. Where do we want to go? What money do you want to be turning over? What profit margin do you want? How big do you want to be? How do you want to be known around Australia or the world? Is the leading something or other? What is it that you actually want? What's the end goal? And then strategy is the in-between bit, how will we actually get there? So it's making a roadmap that you can work out exactly how you're going to make that happen. So curious, hands up if you have a clear strategy and you could comfortably answer all the questions on screen right now here today. They're up to date, you're all over it, you know exactly what you're doing. Hands up. Amanda's feeling confident, so is Jana. And the rest of you are dead quiet. Oh, no, we might have another one to shout out. Annette and Lawrence as well. Good on you 4 people, but out of 68 people, that could be better. This is your homework, 3 simple questions. Go away and answer it. Do it with the workbook in hand. There's spaces where you can complete these sorts of questions. And again, it will really strengthen your business. On that note, you may or may not need some help with a business professional. You know, there are marketing consultants, there are business coaches, there are accountants. They can all, with the right person on board, help you determine your strategy. I've done a lot of strategic planning and development and consulting in the last 6 months, and I feel clearer than ever about the strategic direction of our business. And I believe if you were to ask our staff, they would also say the same thing. Before, we had a bit of an idea about what we're doing, but these days we're super crystal clear. Okay, growth strategies, bringing your existing products to a new market. So who here wants to grow their business? Hands up if you are at the start. I know you're definitely going to have your hand up. Or if you're at any point at all and you just want to grow it, that would be a good thing for you. And growth could be defined by revenue, the number of products you sell, the staff you have, all sorts of things. Great. Most of you want to grow your business. I would have thought so. So there's a few ways you can do that in terms of strategies. You can bring your existing products to new markets is one way you can grow, or you can develop new products for new or existing markets. So if you think back to those globalization macro megatrends, you know, there's some opportunities in there actually. You can look at it from the negative, which is, oh my gosh, this is going to impact on my business, or you can look at it from the positive and think, how can I make this work for my business? So, you know, in the newer existing markets, I did highlight the point that the growth of the Asian markets, you know, they've got this huge upswell from more of them going into the middle class, more of them seeking international travel and services of the middle class. So how can you be tapping into that? There's one consideration. When you're evaluating a new market though, let's say you did say, I would like to get my products into Asia, you need to look at all these things depending on what the product is, of course, again, transportation costs, regulatory approvals, consumer affordability, pricing over there, expected price per unit, respect for intellectual property, which is a big, important thing in Asia, legal infrastructure, determining the total customer base, and so on. So you can read all those things on the screen. I want to highlight with this, though, that really good idea to get some expertise involved. You absolutely can and potentially should do this stuff, but in terms of feasibility, viability, get some professional advice on board. You know, Austrade is, of course, if you're looking at international markets, the government's overall body for assisting companies to do that sort of thing. Your local council may also be able to assist you with that. I've just been reading the Sunshine Coast draft economic strategy, and I know that in there they're wanting to help businesses connect with those global markets and to grow in that way, because it would be good for the local economy. So they're all for protecting it. There can be grants and things available to help you export, so that's something to be aware of. But look, for you, looking at new markets could be taking it from a very localized business to an online business, which means you can service Australia or even the world online. So yeah, take the personal trainer who just took his local clients down to the local park and did so many hours a week. What if you were able to offer those services via a Google Hangout or webinar? Suddenly things just got a whole lot more interesting. So there's lots of different growth strategies available to you, and I hope I've given you some ideas on that front. Another thing on the customer side of things and being strategic about that, we've already talked about the ABC and the 80-20 rule, but let's look at the customer management on another level, and that is that you probably have some high value customers with a low payment risk, as in they bring a lot of business to you, they always pay, that's not a risk. Then you have high value customers with high payment risk. And this quadrant goes around so every scenario is covered. Low value customer with low payment risk and low value customer with a high payment risk. So I'd like you to consider which percentage of your customers would fall into which quadrant, and whether being more conscious of this and planning to move them into other quadrants could strengthen your business. So for instance, the ones who are low value and a high payment risk, they don't pay their bills, or you have suspicions that their company's not doing very well, they're probably ones that you want to get rid of because they are a high risk to you and your business. The ones that are low value but low payment risk, not so bad, they're not really impacting so much. Any of the high payment risks are an issue. So you could be offering to do direct debit, payment plans, and really keeping an eye on, I guess, your overall debt collection, having good systems in place and procedures to ensure that those are enforced. Any comments on that from the audience there? Greg says he's rejigging his now, and Russell says the strategy is in the hands of my wife. Russell, you must trust your wife, and she must know a lot about this kind of stuff, I guess. And if any of you are watching this webinar and are thinking, oh, gee, I'd really like our company to see this, the rest of the team or partners and so on, these webinars are recorded and made available to you post-webinar too. Okay, planning for growth and strengthening your business. We're getting into the last few slides. Key to this is really reviewing your business performance to date. What once was may no longer be. Just because you have had this stellar product that's performed for a long time and done really well doesn't mean it will next week or even next year. And, I guess the stability of business is kind of gone. Business as we knew it. Things change very quickly. Customers like change. Trends move quickly. Technology drives trends. There's lots in it, so you kind of need to start to love data. Now, there's been, again, a word that's been bandied around a lot lately, and that's big data. What that basically means is the world is creating data at quite a rate of knots, and you, as a business owner, have access to this data if you want to. So let's just take Google Analytics as one example. If you were to put that on your website, if you're actually to start looking at it, it will give you insights as to what you could do differently. But if you don't even look at it, if you don't analyze and do something with the data, then there's really no point in having it. Using that data, you can also, from maybe your accounts and things, use financial modeling to analyze different growth scenarios. And there are different templates available to help you with financial modeling from the workbook and other aspects of the business.qld.gov.au website. So here's an example on screen, and I don't know about you, but maths has never been my real strength. So I sometimes look at spreadsheets and numbers and calculations and think, oh my gosh, it just bamboozles my mind. But over time, I've definitely rolled my sleeves up and gone, no, you need to know this stuff, it's important. And I've just pulled in help where I've needed help. So I have a fantastic accountant these days. He's very responsive. I'll just say, I won't say his name, such and such, I need you to produce me a spreadsheet that will help me analyze this, because I know what questions to ask, and he'll do it up, and I'll enter the data and I'll say, does this look right? He might pick up the odd incorrect formula and go from there. Or sometimes I won't have the time for that, and I'll literally say to him, I want to know this, find it out for me, and he'll produce me some spreadsheets. I've also empowered my staff to be able to do that. I've empowered each of my product managers, if you like, to manage that aspect of their business. And at any time, I will ask them for reports and ask them to come up with solutions to things that aren't working their way. Now, when you're looking at growth strategies, as well as looking back, you need to look forwards. So you can use these same types of models to make strategic business decisions. This one on the screen straight out of your workbook, and it's basically a financial model for a gym. And they were looking at new members by subscription period, 1 month, 1 year, and so on. And if they were to, I guess, increase those by 10% and so on, what would that mean? And so that helped them do some projections and let their staff know how many new memberships and so on they had to sell. Not only that, by doing this, you can plan for seasonal peaks and troughs. So if your business, and I've already seen some of you did say it is subject to climatic changes, in Queensland here, we all have a rainy season. We all have the Christmas period, which for some is very busy and for some is very quiet. Plan for that, you know, put it into what you think will happen and whether a project, a strategy, a growth strategy, or so on is viable. Has anyone done this before or does this themselves? And or do you have help? Who do you get to help you with this kind of stuff? Elizabeth said, we're in a period of major refocus with potential for key revenue stream to dry up, doing lots of analysis around costs and using online marketing to seek to expand into new markets. So that's great. Looks like you're using a lot of the strategies we've shared. Elizabeth says, I do a lot of our financial modelling in a fair bit of detail. I'm an accountant. So you're the opposite to me, Elizabeth, aren't you? You love this sort of thing. And I love people like you that love doing it. So I surround myself with great people that I can call on. Like I said, just ask the question and they'll do it, or give it a go myself and get their professional opinion on how it's working. Kelly said, I do this as part of my yearly planning and adjust each quarter depending on what has happened. Really good idea. And look, depending on how competitive your business is and what sort of market you're in, you may need to do it more often than yearly. Some of you, yearly is fine. Some of you might have to do it really quite regularly. All right, in the interest of time, we'll push on. Cash makes the world go round. Cash flow is key to business, and there's pretty much two reasons why most businesses fail. Did you know that? Just two, either growth, they don't grow fast enough, or they grow too fast, either too fast or too slow, and cash flow, or the lack of it. So sometimes, you know, they've actually won the business, they've built the business, but sometimes the company actually hasn't paid them, therefore the cash is tight and they can't pay their bills and they can go under from that. I saw that happen a fair bit in the downturn. You know, people made out like there wasn't enough business around. In lots of cases I saw there was, it's just that people weren't paying their bills. So if you have got a strategy in place to your changing marketplace, once you've got that and your financial models we've been talking about, then you have to develop and put in place policies and actions to service that. So most businesses, the cash flow goes something like this, though I do appreciate it will vary depending on whether you hold inventory and so on. Most people, you know, get some cash in and payments to buy their raw materials. They produce the goods and then they get the customer payments, which is the cash that they create more items with. So you do need to think about ways that you can get this in faster, more effectively, to get more cash up front and all that sort of stuff to keep this cash flow going, because it's a pretty important part of your business, as I say. Here's another way of looking at the typical process. Usually an order is received, the value when the sales order is fulfilled, the invoice when the invoice is issued, and collection. So your challenge today, another bit of homework, is to go away, have a good serious think about how long each of the processes takes in your business and whether they can be sped up. I'm going to boast a little bit just now. We use an online account system and it's been revolutionary to our business. We implemented it in 2009, so a lot of people are just getting into these online account systems now. But we have maintained, even through the GFC, about a 9 or 10 day average payment time. Now, we work with hundreds of clients. Our average value per order varies greatly, from a minimal $60 to, you know, $5,000 and $10,000. But the reason we've been able to achieve that is we have this debt collection system that automates a lot of the process. So how our process goes is we estimate, we invoice, we always do a minimum 50% upfront, and then there's intervals at different times depending on the project. We always get the total money in before the value is provided. So let's say it's a website. The website does not go live until full payment is made. The printing does not get sent to print unless the full payment is made, because it's always those clients who say, I'll pay you, please let it go. I'm on a deadline, that rush you, that don't pay, in my experience. Anyway, once those invoices have been issued, we have an automated system that we say our payment terms are 7 days, and it issues them at 7 days and says at 7 days it's due. And then at 10 days it says it's now overdue, even though it's only 3 days later. When they get 4 messages within a month, and that's without any human interaction or anyone remembering to do it. from my point of view, there's too much error if you leave it to the accounts girl to manually remember to do it and manually email or call them. And with this, you have a record. So our system is 4 automated messages. After that, the accounts girl does hit the phones. She gives them basic warnings, and after that, it's pretty much straight on to the debt collection agency. So it's a pretty swift old process. And as a result of that, our debt collection is very good. So that's a system you may like to look at improving. It can dramatically improve your business. Talita's asking me, is that Xero? No, it's not actually Xero. We do use Xero, but we use it for our BAS and accounting requirements. We actually use another one called FreshBooks that does the automated reminders. We would love Xero to get those into place, but they don't have them just yet. Speeding up receivables. So here's a lot of ideas, again, direct out of your workbook, which you can refer to. I've already alluded to this. Send the invoice as quickly as possible. You know, these crazy businesses that wait till the end of the month to bill, well, you're going to take another month to get the money. Bill it the day it happens. Another strategy with the technology that's out there now is to empower your Salesforce and empower all of your staff to be billing. Why should one person in accounts be the biller? Why don't you have the guys on the road doing the sales with their iPhone or iPad actually raising invoices which feed back into your home base or online system? That's totally possible. It's just about getting the right system for your needs. Don't hesitate to use debt collection services. Some people feel bad about doing that, but you know, this is the cold hard truth. If a company has contracted you to do the business and signed off an agreement, you have all that in writing, and they're not paid, you know, you've given them the value, they should absolutely be sent to the debt collectors. So don't be too, I guess, what's the word, shy about that. Keep records, including clients' reasons for slow payment. We have a CRM where every interaction with the client is logged. So say our accounts girl decided to stop or couldn't come in because she was sick. If that client rang up, any of our staff could look at their client record and see exactly what they said, when they said it, and we could keep that process going. Down the bottom there, aim for partial payment where you know that the customer may be experiencing financial pain. Having said that, we're pretty tough. We do have a heart, and if a client communicates with us and lets us know what's going on, we will usually negotiate. We would rather have money in than nothing in. So that's a principle you may like to adopt yourself as well. Some people do discounts for early payments. So if they do it within 7 days, 5 or 10% off. That's another strategy. We do for our hosting bills, because we were finding there were small amounts and people weren't paying them. Pay up front for the year, get 10% off, and pay up front for 6 months, get 5% off, and that's certainly got a bit of traction as well. Look, there's a bunch of other options on there. You can implement what works for your business. It's an important area, so again, worth spending a bit of time on to improve your cash flow and strengthen your business. So you can also improve your cash flow through accounts payables, not paying them the moment they come in, but paying them nearer to the due date. Inventory, not carrying too much. I see particularly perishables, you know, things like cafes and that. You don't want to have all this food that's just going to go off that you're going to chuck out. So try and get a feel for what goes on and go with the ebb and flow of that. Supplier relationships, you know, can you negotiate better terms? Have you been doing a lot of trade with a certain supplier, and can you get a lesser rate? It's worth asking. We had that discussion on Monday at our team meeting, and I said, gosh, this company, we've been working with them for years. When was the last time someone picked up the phone and said, hey, we put a lot of business through you, can we get a bit of a discount, please? So that's now on their to-do list this week. Factoring in debtor finance is another option, inventory finance, production warehouse finance, and just generally getting your operating costs down. You want to all run lean, mean machines when it comes to your business. So just look at all your expenses on a regular basis. I actually sit down and physically go through them with my bookkeeper every month. We have a scheduled appointment, and I'm a bit of a Donald Trump. Apparently he does this too. I look at every single line item, and I work out what's being spent, and I pick up on stuff that's unnecessary, and I find ways to remove it. Sometimes there's been costs incurred by other staff that really shouldn't have been. Sometimes there's recurring stuff going on that you can eliminate by putting in place other tactics. So that is also a good tactic to improve your cash flow. Now, just two more major points to make. They are the people, the lifeblood of your business. So, look, productivity, we all want our staff to be productive, but actually realizing that is a whole nother thing, which you'll all probably appreciate if you have staff. We've been doing a lot of work on this lately. And again, I'm very frank and open to say it's not easy. What we've done is make them all keep timesheets online, and we're reviewing those each week to say what did you actually do and what did you actually bill. So it's very open, and people can see what value they're contributing to the company. Communicating with your staff is key. I was really impressed when I was in Silicon Valley. Mark Zuckerberg, probably heard of him, the founder of Facebook. He has a massive courtyard and 3,500 staff, and every 2 weeks they have a meeting in that courtyard, and he communicates with his staff, him and the other management. And they're very honest about what's going on, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's basically their way of being transparent and saying, don't believe the media, we'll tell you firsthand what's really going on. And he actually encourages them to come with a point of view and challenge what he's saying. Like, they'll ask questions, and if they're not challenging enough, he'll say, come with a more challenging question. Is that all you got for me? So that's something you can learn from Mark Zuckerberg himself. Motivating your staff, incentivizing your staff. No good just buying them movie tickets if that's the last thing they want. Ask them what they want and give them prizes, set targets. Alliances and partnerships, leverage people by getting other good people around you. You know, when we cut a deal, like we get an accountant on board, we don't just get an accountant, we also looked for ways that we could be supplying them business and they supply us business and all of that. We always think quite broadly, so consider that for your business as well. Most people, I find, are very, very open to that. Look, there is a lot of costs associated with employing employees, which I know only too well myself, and a lot of you will be well aware that superannuation costs are going up. They've just gone up 0.25. You need to pay your staff a minimum of, I believe, 9.25% now, but ask your accountant that. And it will be going up to as much as 12%. So you need to factor that into your cash flow. Annual leave, long service, termination, there's all sorts of things. So if you don't understand what they actually are, sit down and go through and get those costs. I found a really good exercise is just going through and going every single week, what are the costs associated with staff that we just need to have in the bank to do, and going from there. Also on the screen, regular meetings. I'm a big fan of those. We have them every week of a Monday. We call them a focus meeting. They're short, they're half an hour. I find people come in from the weekend and they're just as much benefit for me as they are to the staff. And we basically go around the room and say, what have you got on this week? So it's a way of communicating to each other, negotiating on priorities, and for me to let them all know what I deem priorities as the CEO as well. Set goals and make them accountable. That's something we've done. As I said, we have product owners. They have to report quarterly on how their products are performing, and they just have a few headings. They have to do a little summary. They have to do achievements in that quarter and issues, and then basically show their financials. So it's a one page for each one. It's not too grueling, but it's a great way for them to reflect and review what's happening and hopefully get fired up to go forwards. I could go on about some of these other points, but I'm very conscious of time, so I'll make sure that you do refer to the workbook to get some more out of that slide as well. Systems is another very important way to strengthen your business. My mantra on this is basically work smarter, not harder. So basically go through and consider how adopting technology could assist you in creating a competitive advantage. I can tell you right now, people in your industry, whatever it is, are adopting technology. So if you do not, you will be at a disadvantage because they will be doing business more efficiently, more effectively than you. Now, there's so many technologies you can get, and they don't have to cost you an arm and a leg. They're not necessarily for the big enterprise companies now. Even if you're very small and your budget's very minimal, there are excellent solutions out there. As I alluded to, we've been fully cloud since 2009. It pleases me to see so many companies starting to look at that. Some of them are doing it gradually. Some of them are going boots in and all. But look, if you want to sell online, you can and you should. If you want to track what interactions you have with your customers, there's ways to do that without too much extra work. Accounting and knowing what resources you need, that's possible. If you run a fleet of cars or other vehicles, you can do that too. Online project management, communication, storage. There's so many ways that you can get these systems to help communication and flow and just getting things done. So go through and consider what technology you might need. And just because you've always used a certain system, and even, dare I say it, because you've invested a lot of money into one particular system, doesn't always mean that it's serving you now. You know, I did a systems audit for a company not so long ago, and that invested about $20,000 in a thing about 2 years ago. But basically 2 years is a really long time, and there were far better systems that could service them better. And so we implemented something new for them that has already improved their cash flow and effectiveness. So sometimes spending more might be a bit scary, but as you can see on the bottom, you really got to consider the commercial cost for not investing. If you weren't to invest, how much is it going to cost you in the long run due to lack of productivity and so on? So take a good look at those. Your business value. If you are to do all of these things I've been describing in this webinar, you actually have a pretty good shot at increasing the value of your business. So you need to just work on it and not in it all the time. Basically, everything I'm suggesting is working on it and not in it. It's very hard to do if you are purely on operations, but you know, give yourself, maybe block out a half day a week, or you know, work late one night or get up early one morning and start looking at this stuff, because if you do, it can really improve your business. Now, the value of a business, if you were to sell it tomorrow, they're going to be looking at things like the profit margins and whether they can be improved, the stability of the business, its competitive edge, the maturity of the industry, how reliant the business is on the current owner. So if you were to get in place some of those systems that will make the business perhaps less reliant on you, that's going to help. It's going to help you get a competitive advantage. You know, strengthening your business through some of the things we've done will make it more stable and hopefully make the profit margins more bigger. And also some that people don't always think of, size of a database. If I was to buy your business, I'd certainly want to know how many names am I buying and how active are they and what details do you have on them, so I can market to them. What systems do you have in place? And what trademarks or brand value do you have? Is it a well-known brand? Is it trademarked? Because if it is, that's worth a whole lot more. So have you considered how you can make your business more valuable? And are you taking any steps in these areas? I'd love you to text in what your thoughts are on making your business more valuable. Cool. On to forecasts. You also need to ask yourself, what is our company worth today? How can we fund our growth? You know, do you need loans? Do you need some investors? Do you need to sell part of the business? What are your options? Should we purchase? What's your next venture? Could you buy something versus build it in terms of software and systems and other items? And do you have any acquisition plans? You know, in Silicon Valley, they're doing all of this very much so, and that's why they're doing so well. There's a massive venture capital sort of market. There's lots of angel investing. They are acquiring companies. They are purchasing. They're doing all sorts of stuff. So, you know, when you're a small business, it's hard to think this way if that's where you're at. But you do have options. You've got to keep a nice open mind and basically do what you're doing. Get information on board so you can make really great decisions. Great quote down there from Edward de Bono, very famous man, of course. You can analyze the past, but you need to design the future. And that is the difference between suffering the future and enjoying it. Because if basically you don't make changes, you will suffer in business, because business as we know it is completely being changed. Finally, risks. Even if you do all of this, you don't want something to come in and sweep you off your feet that you didn't expect. So I guess with risks, you've got to look at how likely is each one to occur, how strongly is it likely to affect your business, and how can you mitigate against it happening now. Now we're actually doing a session that goes into risks in a lot more detail. Business continuity planning is the topic if you'd like to jump on and register for that one coming up in the next few days as well. Right, in summary, we've covered a lot of ground. I feel like this is a pretty content-heavy webinar, and I really am available for questions now, but I'm pretty sure we've gone a bit over time. A business must be customer-centric. We've talked about that. We've looked at some trends, and I encourage you to go off and look at other trends that could impact on your business and work those into your strategy. Look at ways you can generate more revenue, grow, improve your cash flow. What could you do differently with people to strengthen your business, and what systems could you implement to strengthen your business? You just look at some of those key points and actually implement them, you'll have a really good shot at strengthening your business. So look, I've referred to the workbook a lot. There's probably quite a few answers to your questions in there, but let's go back through and answer some of the questions that have come through on text message. I'll get Anthony to alert me now of the ones that he hasn't managed to answer, and we may even have some time to unmute some of you and answer some questions too. Okay, so first one, he's got them all queued up for me. He's very good. Lynn says, I'm wanting to sell icing decorations for cakes. I've not started the business yet. I'm wondering how I would set a price on such items. Okay, so good point, Lynn. You probably want to refer back to that pricing slide and or look at the workbook, but you've got a few pricing models in there. Probably the most straightforward one is that cost plus model, where you basically work out what are my costs to produce these cakes. So you'll have to look at the ingredients, your electricity, what else would there be? Telephone, internet, things you need to run that business, and then what all those costs are. So it might work out, let's say, $2 a cupcake. Then you might say, right, well, if that's the case, I need to make $5 a cupcake because I need to make $3. I need to sell this many cupcakes, and therefore that would make me enough to get a wage out of it if that's what you're trying to do. So I hope that sort of method would help you. You may want to go and sit down with a professional, an accountant, to actually nut out those figures, because sometimes it can be hard to think of all the costs you'll have and work out how much that then translates into a per unit. But accountants and other professionals are usually pretty clever at that. All right. Kelly says, is there somewhere you can go to find out more about drop shipping? I would just Google it, to be honest. There'll be lots and lots of stuff online. No one sort of portal comes to mind for me. I mean, Amazon is a big drop shipper, so you can actually sell your stuff through them potentially, but I would just literally Google around and perhaps even go into some of the Facebook groups. There's one called Queensland Business where there's 3,000 very active businesses in Queensland, and you may like to ask them that question. I'm always amazed when I pose questions to stuff I don't know much about, but there's always some expert lurking in there, and usually some great links and things to go and have a look at. So I'll go actually up to Sarah. She's given a great tip here. She, for some of the business planning templates, went to business.qld.gov.au and used them to cash flow her personal finances, which was a slightly different purpose, but it worked well for me. Thanks for reminding me, Sarah. There are lots of really great templates on the business.qld.gov.au website, which I'll get Anthony to text through. We do feature it on the last slide as well, but I encourage you to go through and have a look at those as well. Kelly says, do you have any recommendations of CRMs? I'm always a bit cautious, Kelly, in recommending systems because there's so many out there and they all vary in their price point and their features. So here's my recommendation. You go to look at them and you click on 2 pages. Number 1, features. What does this thing do? Number 2, price point. Can my business afford it? Do I see the value in that? Having said that, we do have a page on the Creative Collective. It's called Technology, where we list a bunch of systems that we really like and or use or recommend. One of them on that list you will see is one called Capsule. It's quite an affordable CRM. There are a number of others though, so I encourage you to go across and have a look at those. John says, read the people section. Do you guys do regular performance reviews and an annual or half-yearly formal performance appraisal, not just sales, financials, but also behavioural? Yes, John, we totally do. My brother's in HR and he, I guess, has been guiding me through that. Had I not had a brother in the HR, I don't know if I would have. We do quarterly performance reviews and they are a bit of a chat, not very formal. And I'll basically ask wide open questions like, how are you liking working here? Anything I can do to make it better, and open up the lines of communication. It's a chance to have a one-on-one. It's a chance for that staff member to tell me any concerns or for me to understand where they're at and what possible training they need, skills development, also where they want to go and try and offer those career options. So yes, we do. We also do an annual, more formal performance review. For those, we may bring in an external HR advisor. We do give them ratings for each of their items on their job description out of 4. It's kind of like a report card. The feedback we get is a lot of staff have never actually had a performance review before working here, and then for those who have, certainly not to the detail we give it, but we find them wonderful. I find them really valuable, and I think the staff find them good feedback and a good opportunity to have some open communication about their behaviour, performance, etc. So yes, absolutely, very important. Okay, Wendy says, can you or any listeners recommend an online project and task management system that you are using or have used for a small business? So very similar answer there, Wendy, to the CRM one. I know lots of online project and task management systems. In terms of finding one that suits you, though, you'd have to look into it. Again, on our technology page, we do list one Basecamp that we use and love, but whether it's suitable for your business, I don't know. Have a look at it. There are lots of others around. I really should add to that list, actually, because I know of a lot of others, but I just haven't managed to get them up there yet. John said, agree with your positive comments, re an effective performance appraisal system. Yeah, pretty important stuff. Right, we'll just have another look through. Rob has offered up, Google have an open source CRM as a starting point as it's free. So there you go. That's a great tip. I'm just going through the list. Tammy says, I have a water carting business. I deliver bulk water for residential purposes. Finding flyers are working, but I've tried Facebook, but I'm not sure how to get more sales online. Any ideas? Tammy, that's a big question. We're actually running a webinar on attracting new customers in the coming days, so I encourage you to register for that. I'll give you a whole hour on how to get people to buy from you, come to you for business, so you might find that useful. Any other questions? Matthew says, is anyone doing fulfillment by Amazon? So he'd like to throw that out there. You can feel free to text chat in if you are. Okay. Chandra has offered up Teamwork PM is good for project management. So there's another one to check out. Okay. I might just now put all your hands down and I'll ask if any of you would like to ask me a question to just raise your hand. Okay, we've got Leanne with her hand up. Just unmuting you now. Hi, Leanne. Did you have a question?
I didn't. I've just noticed. Don't worry. I thought my hand was up, so I was putting it down.
Okay, no worries.
Sorry.
No props. I'll just mute you again. I'm looking up and down the line. Doesn't seem to be any more questions, so we will wrap it up. Look, I've alluded to the fact that the Queensland Government has some really great resources. First port of call should be their business.qld.gov.au website. They're now very much on social media, so if you haven't already tweeted, a reminder, you can tweet them at businessqld.gov, and don't forget to use the hashtag QLDBiz, and tell everyone on Twitter what you thought of today, and we'll retweet you too, and have a good time on Twitter after the webinar. There's a Facebook page. They put out lots of great information on there, and there's YouTube, and they're adding more videos to it all the time. Actually, all of these webinars are translated and put onto YouTube, so if you want to rewatch it, that's a place to go. You can see there's also the Queensland Government's Business and Industry portal, where you can get the latest alerts, information and services tailored to your business. So they're practicing what they preach. They're not just sending you any old thing, they're sending you what you want. So go on and create one, and they will send you out relevant stuff. Finally, thanks for joining us today. We love having people to talk to and run through stuff with. We're sending you a survey now. It is part of our requirement with delivering these webinars that we do need to ask you to do a survey. We promise you it won't take long. We'd really, really, really appreciate it if you could just take a moment to fill it in. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar, and we hope you'll make the most of these other webinars happening at other lunch hours this week. Go to the businessqld.gov website or Facebook page to get a list and to register for more. Thanks so much for joining in.
For your